Jack had always been a good shot. Growing up on Earth, he spent his youth practicing with a rifle in the woods behind his house. But when he was invited to participate in the Galactic Marksman competition, he felt the weight of the universe on his shoulders. This wasn't just a regular competition. The best marksmen from all over the galaxy would be there. Aliens from every corner of the universe were coming to show off their skills. Jack wasn't even sure how he'd been chosen, but the opportunity felt too big to pass up. It was the day of the competition. Jack stood in the middle of a massive stadium filled with spectators. The arena was like nothing he had ever seen before. The sky above was a bright purple, and the ground was a smooth, metallic surface that seemed to stretch endlessly. Thousands of people, human and alien alike, filled the stands, their faces glowing with excitement. Large screens floated in the air, displaying the names of the competitors as they made their way to the stage. Jack's heart raced in his chest. His palms were sweaty, and the rifle he carried felt heavier with each step. He had never been this nervous in his life. This was his chance to show that humans could compete with the best the galaxy had to offer. But as he looked around, he realized that he was surrounded by some of the most skilled marksmen in the universe. Aliens with strange, almost impossible physiques. Creatures who could probably shoot an apple off a tree from 100 miles away. Without even blinking, Jack was human, though. And humans didn't back down from a challenge. When his turn came, he stepped forward, trying to steady his nerves. His opponent, an alien with 6 arms and an extra set of glowing eyes, smiled at him. The crowd was silent, the tension hanging in the air like a thick fog. Jack took a deep breath, remembering everything he had learned as a soldier. He had trained for moments like this, where the smallest mistake could cost him everything. But his hands were shaking. He couldn't stop them. He raised the rifle, took aim, and squeezed the trigger. The shot missed. The crowd erupted in laughter. It wasn't just a small chuckle. The stadium roared with the sound of aliens and humans alike mocking the human who had just missed an easy shot. Jack's face turned red. His heart sank. He had failed. The once promising moment had turned into a public embarrassment. But then something caught his eye. Among the sea of alien faces, one stood out. A woman with skin that shimmered like the night sky, her long silver hair flowing in the wind. She was sitting with a group of other competitors, her head tilted slightly as she watched Jack. When their eyes met, she smiled. It wasn't a mocking smile like the others, but a genuine smile. So she found something amusing in the situation. "Not the best shot, human," she said. Loud enough for Jack to hear, her voice laced with amusement. Jack was still reeling from the laughter of the crowd, but the way she spoke made him pause. She didn't seem to be mocking him. There was something different about her, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. As he lowered the rifle, feeling the weight of his failure, he looked back at her. The alien woman winked at him before turning away to speak to her companions. Jack shook his head. Maybe I'm not cut out for this, he thought to himself. He walked off the stage, trying to ignore the whispers behind him. The competition was still going on, but he had already lost. The rest of the marksmen finished their turns, but Jack couldn't focus on them. All he could think about was the alien woman's smile and the way she had spoken to him. He found a seat in the back of the stadium, away from the crowd. The laughter still echoed in his mind, and his embarrassment gnawed at him. But as the competition came to a close, he tried to shake off the feeling. There was always next year. Or the year. After that, he just needed to practice more. The next day, Jack returned to his small apartment on Earth. He'd been given a few days to explore the city before his return flight, and he took advantage of the time by walking around and reflecting on what had happened. He still couldn't shake the image of the alien woman from his mind. Something about her was intriguing. Her beauty wasn't like anything he had ever seen before, and her presence was magnetic. Jack found himself wondering why she'd been so kind, especially when everyone else had laughed at his failure. A few days passed. Jack's thoughts slowly began to return to normal. That was until his phone buzzed. He had received a message. "This is Lyra. I'm your emergency contact for the next phase of the mission. Please respond at your earliest convenience. Jack blinked, unsure if he was reading it right. Emergency contact? He didn't even know who this Lyra was. He thought back to the competition. The alien woman, was this her? His curiosity piqued. He quickly typed a response. I think you've got the wrong person. I'm not involved in any mission. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed again. No, Jack, you're exactly who I need. I'll explain more soon. Jack stared at the message, his mind racing. What was this all about? Before he could respond, the phone buzzed once more. I'm the alien you met at the competition. I'm Lyra. Don't worry, you're safe. I'll contact you soon. Jack's heart skipped a beat. It was her. The woman from the competition. His first thought was to ignore the message, but something inside him told him he needed to know more. He had no idea what was coming next, but his life was about to change in ways. The days after the competition passed by in a blur for Jack. His mind kept replaying the events of the Galactic Marksman competition, especially that moment when he had missed the shot. He had expected a lot of things that day, but not to be laughed at in front of so many people. It's not to be remembered by someone like Lyra. After the message from Lyra, he had felt a mixture of confusion and curiosity. Why would an alien like her, someone from a species far beyond human understanding, want to contact him? He had no idea what kind of mission she was talking about, but his instinct told him this wasn't going to be an ordinary phone call. And for reasons he couldn't fully explain, he felt compelled to respond. So he did. Hi, Lyra. What's this about a mission? I'm just a regular guy. No idea why I'd be an emergency contact. The response didn't take long. You're the right person for this. Jack, I'll explain everything soon. Please be patient. Jack stared at the message. She wasn't giving him much information, but her tone felt strangely reassuring. It was the kind of calmness that made him feel like everything was going to be okay. Still, he wasn't sure what to make of it. Was she serious? Should he ignore her? He decided to wait. After all, what was the harm in waiting a little longer to see what she had to say? But deep down, Jack had a growing feeling that this was more than just some random mistake. This was a message he needed to pay attention to. Later that day, while Jack was making himself dinner in his small apartment, his phone buzzed again. Froze. He didn't recognize the number this time. But something told him it was Lyra. His heart rate quickened as he unlocked the screen. The message was simple, but it had a certain urgency to it. Jack, I need your help. I've been assigned to protect you. I know it's strange, but there's more at stake here than you realize. Stay where you are. I'll explain everything soon. Jack swallowed hard. Protect him? He wasn't sure if he should be flattered or scared. What could possibly require an alien like Lyra to be assigned to protect him? He wasn't anyone special. It's just a guy who missed a shot in a competition. Nothing more, but still, the message had stirred something in him, something he couldn't ignore. He set down the knife he had been holding. The faint sound of the blade scraping against the cutting board, seeming far too loud in the silence that followed. Stay where you are. That was what she had said. Jack hesitated. He couldn't help but wonder if he was walking into something dangerous. But then there was the curiosity, the need to know. Couldn't deny it, he wanted answers. The next few hours were tense. Jack spent the evening pacing around his apartment. His thoughts kept drifting to Lyra's strange message. He tried to distract himself by flipping through the news on his tablet, but the words and images all seemed to blur together. His mind kept returning to the idea that his life was about to take a strange, unexpected turn. It wasn't until much later that night, around 10 p.m., that his doorbell rang. Jack's heart skipped a beat. Who could that be? It was late, and he hadn't invited anyone over. He walked cautiously to the door, looking through the peephole. What he saw took him by surprise. There stood Lyra, in person. She looked just as stunning as she had in the competition. Her skin, a soft shade of blue. It's almost translucent, with silver patterns running across her arms and face. She stood tall, her posture commanding yet graceful, a quiet strength radiating from her. Jack opened the door, his hand shaking slightly as he gripped the handle. You're really here, he said, his voice betraying a mix of disbelief and awe. Lyra smiled, her eyes glinting with amusement. I told you I'd explain soon. Jack stepped aside, still processing what was happening. I didn't expect ... this. Lyra walked into the apartment, her movements fluid, almost like she was gliding. I understand, she said, her voice soft but firm. It's a lot to take in. Trust me, Jack, you're in more danger than you realize. That's why I've been sent here. Jack closed the door behind her and led her into the living room. What do you mean? What danger? Lyra took a seat on the couch, her eyes scanning the room before she met Jack's gaze. You're being targeted, Jack, not because of the competition, but because you're human. Your race is about to become very important to the galaxy, whether you're ready or not. Jack frowned, sitting down across from her. What are you talking about? Why would anyone target me? The Galactic Council has been watching Earth for a long time, Lyra explained. They've been monitoring your species' progress. There's a lot they don't know about humans, but one thing is clear. You're more resilient than they expected. The mission I'm on involves protecting you and your planet from certain factions that don't want Earth to succeed. Mind raced. Factions. What factions? And what's this mission you're talking about? Lyra sighed, leaning back. I can't give you all the details just yet. Some of it's classified. But I can tell you that a group of alien species, factions, are growing worried. They don't want Earth to gain influence, and they certainly don't want humans to become a major player in galactic politics. Some of them would do anything to prevent that. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. So, what now? What am I supposed to do? Lyra smiled again, this time more reassuringly. No. Right now you're doing exactly what you need to do. Stay safe. Stay calm. I'll handle the rest. Jack nodded slowly, still processing everything. And what's my role in all of this? Just ... a guy who missed a shot. Lyra's expression softened. You might think that, but you're more than just a guy, Jack. You're part of something much bigger. And you're going to need to be ready. I'll be here to make sure of that. Jack took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. Everything was moving so fast, and he had no idea what the future held. But one thing was certain, his life had just... The following days felt like a blur to Jack. He tried to get back to his normal routine, but his mind kept returning to the conversation with Lyra. What had she meant when she said he was being targeted? What did this have to do with him? Being human? His life, once simple and quiet, had been turned upside down? Lyra stayed in contact, sending him messages with occasional updates, but nothing that explained exactly what was going on. She had told him to stay calm and to trust her, but the more Jack thought about it, the more uneasy he became. What if there was something out there, something dangerous, coming for him? He wasn't prepared for that. He was just a guy who missed. A shot in a galactic competition. What made him so special? It wasn't until 4 days later that Jack got his first real answer. He was walking home from a small grocery store, his mind wandering as he carried his bags, when his phone buzzed. In his pocket, it was a message from Lyra. Jack, we have a problem. Something has triggered a warning. Be ready. I'll be there soon. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He quickly dropped the bags and glanced around, trying to spot any unusual activity. It was quiet. No sign of anything out of place. He quickly texted back. What's going on? Before Lyra could respond, Jack's phone rang. It was her, he answered quickly. Lyra, what's happening? What should I be ready for? Her voice came through with a note of urgency. It's happening faster than we thought. You're in danger, Jack. You need to get to a safe place. Oh, wait. What do you mean? What danger? Where am I supposed to go? Just go to the nearest safe house. I'll send you the coordinates. Stay quiet and don't trust anyone. You'll be safer if you don't tell anyone what's going on. Explain more when you're safe. Trust me, Jack. Before Jack could ask more questions, the line went dead. He stood frozen for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. Danger? He had no idea what was going on, but his gut told him this was serious. He quickly grabbed his bags again and walked briskly down the street, making his way to the nearest alley. He didn't know where the safe house was, but he had to get out of sight. The fear that had been building in his chest the past few days was now real. something was coming. As he turned the corner into a quieter area of town, he felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Something wasn't right. He looked around again, but there was no one nearby. He quickly pulled out his phone to check the message Lyra had sent him. Coordinates were clear, but it would take him across town to a secluded area. Place, it was an old warehouse district. Nothing out of the ordinary, except for the fact that Lyra had sent him there in a hurry. Jack took a deep breath. It was time to move. He made his way through the streets, trying not to draw attention to himself. His mind raced as he thought about Lyra and the mission she had hinted at. He had never imagined that something like this, something so dangerous, could be happening right under his nose. He had just been an ordinary guy a few days ago. Now he was running from something. When he arrived at the coordinates, he saw nothing but abandoned buildings and empty streets. The area was quiet. Too quiet. Didn't feel like the kind of place anyone would hang around. Jack approached the building Lyra had indicated, a large gray warehouse at the far end of the block. He carefully opened the door, keeping his footsteps light and steady. Inside, it was dark, save for a few beams of light coming through cracks in the walls. He could hear a low hum, but it wasn't clear where it was coming from. As he stepped further into the warehouse, his phone buzzed again. It was Lyra. "I'll be there in 5 minutes. Stay low. No one can know you're here." Jack sat down in a corner, trying to steady his breathing. He wanted to ask more questions, but he knew better than to ask now. Whatever was coming, Lyra was the only one who could explain it. And until then, he needed to stay out of sight. Minutes passed, and Jack's nerves were starting to get the best of him. He heard footsteps coming closer and quickly crouched down behind a stack of crates. The door to the warehouse creaked open. A figure stepped inside. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he tried to make out who it was. He only had a few moments before they would spot him. The figure moved closer, and Jack tensed, ready to react. But then the figure spoke, and his voice was unmistakable. "Jack." It was Lyra. She stepped into the dim light, her features more defined now that he could see her clearly. She was wearing a dark jacket, her hair pulled back, and her eyes were scanning the room, alert for any potential danger. "Lyra?" Jack whispered, standing up cautiously. "What's going on? Why did you bring me here? What's this all about?" She looked around, then motioned for him to follow her. "There's no time to explain everything, but I can tell you this. The factions I warned you about are already here. They've been watching Earth for a while, but now they've made their move." Jack felt a chill crawl up his spine. "What do they want from me?" Lyra paused, her expression serious. "They want to control Earth. They want to prevent humans from becoming a major power in the galaxy. You're a target, Jack. I'm here to protect you." "But why me? I don't understand." "I'm just a guy." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her grip firm but reassuring. "You don't realize it yet, Jack, but you're more important than you think. Your actions will shape the future of humanity and the galaxy." Jack looked into her eyes, finally understanding that the life he had once known was gone. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than him, and he was caught. The days following their first meeting at the warehouse were a blur of tension, secrecy, and strange new revelations for Jack. Lyra's warning had only deepened his sense of unease. The factions she spoke of were still a mystery, but one thing was certain. Something was coming, and it was coming fast. Lyra had kept her word, staying in contact and offering what little information she could as they moved from one safe house to another. Jack had learned quickly that staying hidden was as much about trust as it was about caution. Trust in Lyra, in her warnings, and in the fact that she was doing everything she could to protect him. But Jack couldn't help but feel a growing sense of frustration. He was still just a guy, a marksman who had missed a shot at a galactic competition. Yet here he was, being dragged into a larger, more dangerous game, one he didn't understand. As the days went on, he found himself spending more time with Lyra, learning about her life and the mission she was on. They spoke more freely now, the awkwardness of their first encounter slowly fading. She had begun to explain things in more detail, though still only bits and pieces. I was sent to Earth for a reason, Lyra had told him one evening, sitting across from him in a small, dimly lit room. The flicker of a candle cast shadows on the walls as they spoke in hushed tones. To protect you, Jack. I know it seems strange, but you're part of something much bigger than you realize. Jack sat forward, still struggling to make sense of it all. I'm still not following. Why me? What's so important about a guy who missed a shot in a competition? Lyra smiled softly, her eyes thoughtful. It's not just about that competition. It's about your potential. Your species has something no one else in the galaxy has. Humans are adaptable, capable of change in ways that other species can't even begin to understand. And that makes you dangerous? Dangerous? Jack asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, Lyra said, nodding. That's why the factions are worried. You've only just begun to reach your full potential, and they're scared of what that could mean. They know that if Earth succeeds, it will change everything. Jack leaned back in his chair, absorbing her words. It was hard to grasp the idea that he, someone so ordinary, could have any impact on the galaxy. But Lyra's conviction in her words was undeniable. She seemed certain that his future, humanity's future, was at the center of something much larger. Why don't you just tell me everything? Jack asked, his voice tinged with frustration. Why all the secrets? Why can't you just explain? Why I'm so important? Lyra looked at him for a long moment, her expression softening. I wish I could, but there are things... Things I can't share yet. It's not just about you, Jack. It's about Earth. The galaxy's watching. And if we make a wrong move, everything could fall apart. Jack shook his head. It's hard. To believe all of this? I'm just a guy. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Lyra's voice softened. You don't have to do anything yet, Jack. You just have to trust me. Trust that I'll protect you and help guide you through this. You're not alone. There was a long silence between them, both of them lost in their thoughts. The connection they shared, though still new, was growing stronger. Jack could sense it in the way they spoke, in the way their conversations flowed more easily now. He had never expected to feel such trust for someone so quickly, but with Lyra it seemed natural. Over the next few days, their bond deepened further. They spent time together in the safe houses, learning from each other. Jack taught Lyra more about Earth's ways, helping her understand human behavior and technology. In return, Lyra showed Jack glimpses of the galaxy, of the different alien cultures, and the complex politics that shaped the universe. Lyra had a way of explaining things that made it all seem less complicated. She spoke with a quiet confidence, and Jack found himself drawn to her calm presence. She wasn't just his protector, she was becoming something more to him. He could see it in the way she cared for him, the way she made sure he was always safe, always prepared. One evening, as they sat together in another small hidden room, Jack looked over at Lyra. Do you ever get tired of this? He asked quietly. All the running, the hiding, the secrets. Lyra looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the dim light. I've been doing this for a long time, Jack. It's not easy, but it's necessary. Sometimes I wish I could be more open with you, but the stakes are too high. If we fail, everything we've worked for, it all comes crashing down. Jack nodded, his mind racing. I get that, but it doesn't make it easier. No, Lyra said softly, it doesn't. But that's why we have to stick together. We're stronger when we're united. And that's something I've learned. About humans. You may not realize it yet, but you're more capable than you give yourself credit for. The words hung in the air between them. Jack had never thought of himself as special. He had always been just a guy trying to get by. As he looked at Lyra, he couldn't help but wonder if she was right. Maybe he was capable of more than he knew. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just about surviving. This was about becoming something greater. As the days passed, the stakes grew higher. The factions were still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Jack and Lyra knew it was only a matter of time before they would have to face them. But for now, they focused on what they could control, staying safe, staying together, and preparing for what was to come. For the first time since this all began, Jack felt a flicker of hope. Lyra had shown him that, despite the danger, there was something worth fighting for. And maybe, Just maybe, he was ready. Jack had never imagined his life could change so quickly. Just a few weeks ago, he had been living a normal life, practicing his shooting for the Galactic Marksman competition and going about his day. Now, here he was, on the run, with Lyra, his alien protector, facing an unknown threat from factions that were bent on stopping humanity from achieving its potential. The safe houses were becoming more dangerous as time passed. The factions Lyra had warned him about were closing in, their presence felt in every corner of the galaxy. Every time Jack thought he had a moment of peace, it was shattered by another message or another close call. It felt as though they were always one step ahead. Jack's anxiety was growing. Every little sound made him jump. Every unfamiliar face on the street made him look over his shoulder. But through all the chaos, one thing was clear. Lyra was determined to protect him. And Jack, though unsure of what his role was becoming determined to help her. As they continued their journey together, Jack found himself growing not only closer to her, but also more confident in his ability to handle whatever came their way. That confidence was tested when Lyra contacted him one evening, the message simple but urgent: Jack, it's time. We're going to face them. It had been a long time since Jack had heard the word "we" in reference to his involvement. But there it was. The moment he had dreaded was finally upon them. The factions weren't just watching anymore, they were making their move. The time had come for Jack to step up, whether he was ready or not. Lyra had arranged a meeting in a remote area, far from any safe houses. Jack made his way there, trying to stay calm. His heart pounded as he walked through the streets, his mind racing with questions. What was the plan? What did this all mean? When he arrived, Lyra was already waiting for him, her expression serious. She looked even more focused than usual, her eyes scanning the area with military precision. Jack could tell she was ready. Wasn't so sure about himself, ready? She asked, her voice steady. Jack nodded, even though doubts still gnawed at him. I think so, but how are we supposed to stop them? They're bigger, stronger, ... Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, cutting off his nervous rambling. It's not about being bigger or stronger, Jack. It's about being smarter. We're going to outthink them, outlast them, and we're going to do it together. Jack swallowed hard. The fear was still there, but something about her words gave him the strength to push it aside. He had come this far with Lyra by his side. Now, it was time to stand by her, to prove that he could do more than miss a shot in a competition. All right, Jack said, his voice more confident than he felt. What's the plan? Lyra smiled, a hint of pride in her eyes. We'll need to get to their command center. That's where we'll hit them the hardest. I have a way in, but it won't be easy. Jack followed her through a series of narrow streets and alleyways, moving quickly but quietly. The night was dark, and the only sound was the crunch of their footsteps on the gravel. Jack couldn't help but wonder what was waiting for them at the end of this journey. The closer they got to their target, the more the tension grew. When they reached the command center, Lyra stopped and looked at Jack. This is it, she said quietly. We do this together. If we fail, they'll have us both. But if we succeed, she trailed off, her voice filled with determination. We change everything. Jack felt the weight of her words settle on his shoulders. He didn't know if he was ready for this, but he knew he couldn't turn back now. He nodded, his heart racing. They entered the command center, and Jack was immediately struck by the high-tech security. The place was crawling with alien guards, each one more intimidating than the last. But Lyra moved through the shadows with ease, guiding Jack along the walls. Staying out of sight, Jack followed her every step, his pulse quickening. This wasn't the kind of situation he was used to. In his past life, he had been trained to follow orders to fight in a war. But this was different. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a battle for humanity's future. They reached the central control room, and Lyra quickly disabled the security systems. Jack felt a strange sense of pride. For the first time since this whole thing had started, he felt like he was actually doing something important. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. Lyra cursed under her breath. We're running out of time. Jack's heart raced. The alarms meant the factions were aware of their presence. The countdown had begun. "Lyra, what do we do now?" Jack asked, his voice tight with fear. Lyra's eyes locked onto his. "We make our stand. Don't give them any more time to act." Before Jack could respond, the door to the control room burst open and a group of alien soldiers stormed. The battle was on. Lyra moved with incredible speed, taking down one of the soldiers in seconds. Jack grabbed a weapon that had been left behind, his hands shaking but determined. He had no choice now. He had to fight. The chaos around them was deafening. The air filled with the sound of weapons firing and the thudding of footsteps. Jack's heart was pounding in his chest, but he kept his focus. He could hear Lyra's voice, calm and steady, guiding him through the battle. "Stay close. Watch your back." They moved through the facility, taking down soldier after soldier. It felt like an eternity, but they didn't stop. Jack was no longer the nervous marksman. From the competition, he was a fighter now, doing everything he could to protect humanity and help Lyra. Finally, they reached the control panel. Lyra quickly worked to upload a virus into the system, one that would disable the faction's communication and stop their plans cold. "We did it," Lyra said, smile creeping onto her face as the lights in the facility flickered and then went out. Jack let out a sigh of relief, eyed his body still trembling from the fight. "We did it." Lyra turned to him, her eyes filled with pride. "Together, Jack. We did it together." As the sound of distant explosions echoed in the background, Jack realized something. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was about becoming part of something much bigger. For the first time in his life, Jack felt ready to. The aftermath of the battle left Jack exhausted, both physically and mentally. He sat against a wall, trying to catch his breath as Lyra finished making sure the control center was fully disabled. It was over, but the feeling of tension still lingered in the air. The faction's plans had been thwarted, but the war was far from finished. The galaxy was still uncertain about Earth's place in it, and Jack had the unsettling feeling that things were just beginning. Lyra approached him, her face serious but with a hint of pride in her eyes. She had been his guide, his protector, and now she had become something more, his partner. For the first time since he had been thrust into this dangerous world, Jack felt like he truly belonged. He was no longer just a guy who had missed a shot in a competition. He was part of something important. He had made a difference. "Is it over?" Jack asked, his voice hoarse. Lyra gave him a small nod, though her expression remained guarded. "For now, we've stopped their plans for the time being. But this isn't the end of the factions. They will come after us again. We have to be ready." Jack stood up, brushing himself off. His muscles ached from the fight, but he knew he couldn't relax just yet. "I don't know if I'm ready for this, Lyra. I've never been a soldier. I've never been part of something this ... big." Lyra stepped closer to him, her eyes softening. "You've already proven yourself, Jack. You were ready the moment you decided to stand by my side. You're more capable than you think." Jack looked down at his hands, his fingers still trembling from the adrenaline rush of the battle. He had been so afraid when this all started. He'd never imagined that a simple competition could lead him into a galactic conflict. But here he was, standing beside an alien woman, facing down enemies from across the universe, and somehow he had survived. More than that, he had made a difference. "I'm not sure what's coming next," Jack said quietly. "But I want to help. I want to fight for Earth, for humanity." Lyra smiled, her expression full of approval. "That's the spirit, Jack. You've already shown that you're ready to fight for what's important. We will need every fighter we can get." As they made their way out of the facility, Jack's mind raced. The future was uncertain. But he knew one thing. He wasn't alone in this fight. Lyra had become more than just his protector. It was his ally, his partner. Together, they had faced the factions and come out victorious, but the road ahead would be full of challenges. They had to keep moving forward, even when the path seemed unclear. When they reached the outside, the night sky stretched endlessly. Above them, the stars were bright, twinkling like distant promises. Jack took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what they had just accomplished. But there was more to do. They couldn't stop now. The factions were still out there, still watching Earth, waiting for the right moment to strike again. We need to regroup, Lyra said, breaking Jack's thoughts. There are more safe houses we need to visit. We have to stay ahead of them. Jack nodded. He was tired, but he couldn't afford to rest. Not yet. They had come so far. Now it was time to prepare for the next phase. As they walked through the dark streets, Jack couldn't help but reflect on how much he had changed in such a short amount of time. The man who had once been nervous about missing a shot in a competition had now become a warrior. Someone who was willing to fight to protect his planet. He'd learned so much from Lyra, and he knew there was still so much more to learn. He glanced over at her, noticing the way she moved with such ease, her posture relaxed but alert. She was a warrior in her own right, someone who had seen countless battles, who had fought in ways Jack couldn't even begin to understand. And yet, she trusted him. She believed in him. That thought gave Jack strength, more than any weapon ever could. Lyra, Jack said, his voice steady now. What happens after all of this? After we've dealt with the factions? Lyra looked at him, her gaze soft, but filled with purpose. We rebuild, Jack. We fight for peace, and we make sure that Earth has a place in the galaxy.
Ow.
There's still so much for humanity to offer. But it won't be easy. We'll have to prove ourselves. Jack felt a sense of determination rise within him. He wasn't sure what the future held. But he knew one thing. He was no longer just a man caught up in something he didn't understand. He was part of a larger mission, and he wasn't going to back down now. We'll prove ourselves. Then, Jack said, a sense of purpose settling in his chest. We'll show them what humans can do. Lyra's smile widened, and for the first time in a long while, Jack felt hopeful. He had no idea what the future would bring. But with Lyra by his side and the strength of humanity behind him, he knew they could